Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Birth Boot Camp podcast. This is Holly Hopley, your CEO.
I'm Hanan Webster, head of marketing and social media.
And today we are really excited to we have a guest today. It's been a little while since we've had some guests, and this is one of our instructors and doulas. We have Hillery Potter with us. And will you just take a minute and introduce yourself? Tell us a little about you and your family and where you live and what you do.
Hi, I'm Hillery Potter. I am a mom to 4 kids. We live in Northeast Tennessee, kind of sandwiched between Virginia and North Carolina. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, can I meet you in Nashville?" No, that's almost 5 hours away. So that's Tennessee is a very long, skinny state, and I'm wedged in the far corner. My kids right now range between 11 and 20. I have my second one's going to graduate this year. So they keep me and my husband busy. Me and my husband both run our own businesses. I work as a doula and a childbirth instructor, as well as doing placenta encapsulation and pretty much anything kind of birth related. What I kind of do. We've lived in Tennessee for 13 years now. Before that, we lived in Missouri, but my husband and I both grew up in Arizona and New Mexico. So very much kind of, very aware of the Southwest and lived there for a long time and still miss it sometimes. But now we live here.
Awesome. Cool. So do you do birth work like pretty much like that's your full-time job? Would you consider it that?
Yes, it always has its seasons. It has, as sometimes, we like to say birth work has feast or famine. I can be extraordinarily busy, and then I usually have a couple months out of the year where I'm kind of looking around going, where are my people?
Right.
And I recently had someone say, it never stays like that. Try to enjoy it, appreciate the break because it will fill up again. And, that's starting to happen again. I know my summer is going to be busy. Right. So,
That's good.
I would say that, I wouldn't classify it as a full-time of 40 hours a week, but is it my primary thing I do? Yes. I don't do any other kind of work other than birth work. And my kids are, my family is the rest of that.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is full-time too.
Yeah. That's one thing I always loved about birth work is like, it's what I focus on. I would say it's my full-time job, but does it require 40 hours a week?
Right.
Not always.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I totally agree with like the feast or famine thing. Like, and I learned to always be really grateful for those times where I had to like, things were calmer and I didn't have as many clients because then I'd get super busy and I'd be like, man, I'm so glad I had a break.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can have like a few weeks off call and you don't have to have, your phone right next to you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
those breaks are nice.
Yep. And that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about is just like being on call and life as a doula. So yeah, what were you going to say, Hanan?
Looks like I was going to ask her, how did you get into birth work? Like what prompted you?
Moms and babies have kind of always been an obsession, if you want to even put it that way. From the time I was little, I said that was like the first job I ever said I wanted. Was I found out that some people volunteered at the NICU to cuddle babies, and I was like 5, and I'm like, how can I do that? How can I cuddle babies as a volunteer? And so, I looked at multiple different routes growing up, being a nurse, different options. Ended up going down a very different path. But my primary goal in life was to become a mom. And so as soon as I got married, I wanted to have my family. And over time, because I had my kids before my friends did, then I became the person that my friends would ask for advice from, right?
Gotcha.
Is this normal? And, talking about pregnancy with each other and watching them go through birth situations that I hadn't encountered and wanting to help or understand things more. So just over time, and finally, it was just one of those moments of, oh, there's this thing called a doula. Like I knew it existed like out there somewhere, and oh, I could actually do that. And my kids were to the age where I felt like it was doable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So, so will you tell us a little bit about like what your typical day looks like as an instructor and a doula and um like things that you do like on a regular basis for your business?
Things that have to be regularly done are, which I, sometimes really great at social media. Of course, it depends,
Mm-hmm.
am I busy in person or not? Social media is important. That is a way that some people find me. Working on my website, I usually sit down like once a year and do like an overhaul of my website, but then there's always little tweaking things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Checking on if I'm listed as a doula on other places like Doula Match. Like once a month, you need to check your availability because then you get boosted on people finding you. Things
Right.
like that are very important. And then it's responding to people is a big part of the day to day.
Yeah.
Like checking my emails, checking my texts. If it's a potential client or a current client that is reaching out, that they have questions, they have concerns, do I need to check in with them because I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks? And, what has the doctor said? You're getting close to your due date, things like that. So that's the kind of the constant day to day. And then it always seems like there's like a influx of sudden like potential clients that want interviews. And it'll
Mm-hmm.
be like I'll spend like a week going to potential client interviews and then not have any for a month or two. And so
Yeah.
they kind of come in waves. And so sometimes I am busier on leaving the house to meet with people, and sometimes it's very much online. But that's
Mm-hmm.
something that is kind of a constant.
Yeah. Yep. Do you
Mix.
have a time or like certain days that you like to do like interviews or client meetings or anything like that?
A lot of times I usually start off with asking what their schedule is. I often will meet on weekends, which I know some doulas are very, and everyone has to find what works for them.
Right.
Um, I don't mind meeting on weekends because I do homeschool my three younger kids. And so during the week with everyone has a different schedule because they're
Mm-hmm.
all at this different levels in life. So we have different things going on for
Mhm.
each kid every single day except for like Friday. And so that is my priority unless my husband's available. So I'm like, no, actually, I'm fine with meeting you on Saturday afternoon at Panera or sometimes a Sunday afternoon. Sunday's more rare. More people are willing to meet on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it will be a phone interview or even a Zoom interview, but it's nice to meet people in person. So
Yeah.
I
yeah,
agree.
I think my favorite day is probably Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I love that you mentioned that, like, as a doula, you get to choose like what works best for you when
Yeah,
meeting with people. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I tell every new doula that I train is like, make it work for you and your
Mhm.
family. Don't feel like you have to like go and meet them on their schedule and, you know, near their house. I'm like, schedule it when it works for you. Cause when I was doing doula work full time, it was evenings and weekends when my husband could be home
Right.
and
Yeah.
when he wasn't in school, and it just made it easier. Whereas now it's easier for me to go during the day, now that my kids are older and we're a little bit more flexible. And so yeah, make it work for you.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yep.
What about on days that you don't necessarily like have a birth or class, or what are those days compared look like to like the busier days?
I think it's one of those things that's kind of like always on the back of your mind. So it might be a day that's a good day to write down ideas for future uses. Oh, I really need to plan this for social media, or I need to work on my price list, or um, I need to reach out to so and so who's been asking about becoming a doula. I've had quite a few of those people lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I know someone I forgot. She texted me while I was driving the other day, and I texted her back and apologized. I said, I am so sorry. I got your text. I read it and I didn't reply because, driving.
Oh, we're
Um,
we're all guilty of that. Don't worry.
yes, yes.
At
And,
least you
she's,
responded finally. That's instead of just ghosting her.
yeah, yeah. She just signed up with Birth Boot Camp for doula training and was kind of looking for ideas of like how much should I be reading? That's really up to you. But here's what worked for me, kind of thing. So I think it's more of kind of on slower days about brainstorming, and
That's
just
smart.
looking for the new ideas.
Yeah, I like how you said it's always on the back of your mind, because it really,
always.
always.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Or
definitely.
sometimes it can be sometimes thinking about a client I had 3 years ago and wondering, oh, I wonder how they're doing. They moved across the country. I wonder how their family is.
Right. Right. I know that's one thing I love about social media, is that you're able to keep up, with those people. And every once in a while I'll get a message from somebody that, I was their doula a long time ago, or, they took my class. There was one just a few months ago. I got a message from somebody who was like, hey, like, I know you're not here anymore, but I wanted to let you know that I had a VBAC with my second, because with her first, when I was there, she had a C-section, and she was excited to tell me that she got her VBAC, so.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of tell me, like, how you make it work with, like, your kids, and just like family life, and we homeschool too. So I kind of feel like we'll have a very similar answer. But just kind of tell us how you make it work for your family. We kind of mentioned already, like, scheduling things, when they work for you guys, but do you have any other thoughts about that?
Having support, whether it's a babysitter on call. I've been very blessed that, because my husband's job is also flexible, because he also works for himself. Now, he's not 100% flexible, but usually he has been. And of course, as my kids have gotten older, they've become the backup. So, I have a 20-year-old and I have a 17, soon to be 18-year-old. And so I don't have any tiny kids anymore. I could leave everyone at home alone if I had to, and it's not the end of the world. They know how to feed themselves, they know how to cook, things like that. It's very different than my friends who have a 1-year-old that they're worried about leaving for a birth. And but even then, or even when my kids were younger, it was all about, okay, who is available? Well, my dad happens to live next door. My dad was the second backup. Cool. The first person I called was my husband. If he couldn't pick up the kids or take them somewhere, then I knew my dad usually could. My sister-in-law can, and so, having that support of whatever it looks like for you, of people that are willing to drop things to help you, is kind of the way you survive that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. 100% agree. Yep. Yep. And we talk a lot about, like, our clients, they need to build up their support group, but we need it. We need it just as much in order to make this work sustainable. To have that support. So
for sure.
That's when I have new doulas reach out to me, then they're always, what do I need to know about this? And I'm like, you get your support system set up, find your childcare, get all that figured out, and then your life will be so much easier.
Yes.
So, yep.
Yeah. And I know that one of my good friends who's a doula, and I think that's another thing that's been extremely helpful for me, is I have become friends with, like, every active doula in the area. We have, like, a doula collaborative / support group where we meet usually once a month and talk to each other. And, almost everyone is trained with a different organization, which is kind of fun, because, we see the pros and cons. And I always advocate for birth boot camp, because I really do think you guys have some of the, absolutely the best support for, current doulas, and just the information you provide for clients is amazing too, compared to other groups. And so having them also as doula backups, I'm having an issue with a client, can someone give me some direction, or a doctor recommended, kind of thing, is also, so that support, like professional support group and backup, as well as the family. So doula friends that have much younger kids, it's incredibly important that they have that friend that can run over in the middle of the night if needed, or a husband or partner or someone that's flexible. And I also know single moms that are doing this definitely have to, make sure their ducks are in a row. It's just, they can do it, but it can be very challenging.
Yeah, it just takes lots of planning, and
lots of planning.
Yeah, just being prepared for kind of every circumstance and situation. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Being a birth professional and a mother, for you personally, what would you say has been the most challenging part of doing both?
A good question. I think not bringing, trying to process things you've experienced without bringing it home and dumping it on your family. You know, when you have that amazing birth that's beautiful and wonderful and you're on cloud nine, it's great to come home and like it spill over into your family. But when it's, I've been awake for 40 hours and I am exhausted, things didn't go, you know, the beautiful way that everyone had hoped, and everyone's satisfied at the end, but it's also going to hang on you for a while. And that is, again, where that other support comes in of the having the safe people to talk to so that it's not your kids listening to you. So I think that's probably the most challenging part is the mental or even the emotional burden that you carry for other moms not pulling you down.
That's a really good point. I don't think anybody has ever answered that question the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't
I
really
love
talk
that.
about that much. Yeah, I love that too. Because it is one of those parts about doing doula work where we don't talk about sometimes the emotional aspect of sometimes that trauma that you get too from other people's births. And I love that. Yeah, being able to have that support of other doulas and birth workers who you can talk to, so that way we're not traumatizing our children into not having children because of it.
Other people that really get it, because there's definitely, you know, one, you want to keep, you want to respect your client's privacy, and to not just, you know, you're not going to just blab to the world. We're not those kind of people. And secondly, not very few people get it. Unless you're a birth worker, you don't get it at the same level, being like, well, it didn't happen to you, so why is it bothering you? Because they watched it happen.
Yeah. And the whole like, well, the baby's healthy.
Right. And it's like, but the mom's heartbroken.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I am so glad you brought that up. Yep. So I know that I personally hear a lot of people tell me that they want to wait to become doulas until their kids are older. And you kind of mentioned that too. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because I'm the total opposite. I felt like it was easier to be a doula when my kids were little.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both. And you just kind of have to decide if it's going to work for your family when they're little, that's great. And I can totally understand some of the positives of that. They're going to miss you, but they're going to miss you in a different way than they will when they're older. When they're older, if it's the possibility you're going to miss a family holiday, which I did miss Thanksgiving this past year. And even though I felt like, and me and my backup actually split the day so that neither one of us would miss everything.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
You know, and my client was very happy with that. She was, you know, thrilled with the situation. That way, at least, you know, she had multiple people. Even though my older kids were like, yeah, it's mom's job. This has never happened before. It probably won't happen again. You know, she did come for half the day kind of thing. My youngest was still devastated and was still like, I can't believe you did this. And I'm, you know, very sad about it. So I was like, there is that shift on younger kids being more flexible in some ways. And more kind of like rolling with things, whereas you see the middle schoolers, and I had another birth worker tell me this. She's like, are you sure you want to do a ton of work when your kids are in middle school? She's like, I regret doing that. And that was, you know, her personal opinion. She was like, I think my kids struggled more as they got older than they did when they were little. She's like, I could go to a birth when they were little and they were asleep, and I could come back in the morning and they were like, cool, whatever.
Right.
And it was when they were older in middle school, they're like, I need you.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It depends on your family and what level of busyness you're going to have and what kind of support system you have. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a doula, like that's part of owning your own business is you get to choose to when, you know, if you don't want to take clients around the bigger holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, then you can choose not to do that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was much easier. It was easier for me when my kids were little because it was just like, I'm either taking them to the babysitter or leaving them home with my husband. Whereas now it's like we have dance and karate
Right.
Yes.
and like all the things
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, and my husband's not home to take them to those things during the day,
Yeah.
So it's like, so I do find myself, I just don't take as many clients right now just because that's where we're at in life. Whereas
Right.
there
Yes.
was a time where I had a full load, and I was busy and I loved it. Whereas now, I'm just not in that stage of life. And but we totally plan on when they get just a little bit older, probably in just a few years, I'll be able to do more of it again,
Right.
So I just think it's important for people who are thinking about doing this to really think about your family situation and know that it is totally possible to do, whether you have younger kids or older kids or and you can, like we've said, you can make it work for your family. And so
ebb and flow how you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you have a kid that's driving,
Mhm.
it totally
Easier.
changes things.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in that stage right now. I can't wait.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking to my oldest about it too. He's a couple years out still. But I was like, in a couple years, you're going to be able to drive. And I was like, you can take yourself to karate. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Drive all the
that
siblings
stuff.
around.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
How has your husband, how's he been supportive or helpful over the years with doing birth work or with you mentioned like his work is flexible so he can help with the kids and stuff like that, but emotionally, like how has he been supportive, or how does that work?
Yeah, and I think that I've been very thankful for that, because I have heard other people say that, their husband doesn't want to know how the birth went. They don't want to talk to their wife about it. And, and that's how their family dynamic works. And I want to be able to come home and talk to him about how I'm feeling, how things went. He gets it, he understands it, and that's helpful. He grew
That's
up in a
awesome.
family, his mom is a nurse. So he grew up around like medical talk all the time. And then we had our 4 kids, and, he's always been, whether he wanted to listen or not, I've always been like, guess what I just learned, kind of thing. So he's always been very supportive. And I know recently I was like, hey, I'd like to take this workshop, but it costs a little bit of money. And he was like, is it for your business? Yeah. And he's like, that's great. Take the workshop, So always very supportive of, when I went to doula training / instructor training, and I was gone for 8 days. And that was at that point definitely the longest I had been away from, all 4 kids. And here, honey.
Yeah.
He begged me to never leave again when I got home, admittedly. But, he's always been game for it. He's like, I know this is something you've always had a desire to do. And he's like, you wouldn't be you if you didn't. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that you have that support. And that's important. I think your partner has to give you that support to be able to continue this work, or else you just can't feel like you can do it on either side.
Yeah, I've known doulas who their family wasn't super, like they didn't like them being on call. They didn't like them, missing things. And it was a struggle for them.
Yeah, that would be. And I know that there's only been a few times where like I knew a mom was possibly in early labor, or, or even farther into labor, and we already had a family event planned, and, like, okay, I can go, but we have to take separate cars and you have to be prepared for me to leave. And he's like, I know, it's your job. That's great. And so having that support of, not being negative towards that has obviously very helpful.
Right.
Makes a huge difference.
We had probably 6 or so months ago, we had a spouse call our birth boot camp number.
Yeah.
And so I called him back because he was like, I just would love to talk to you guys about how I can support my wife who just went through training.
Wow.
And so I just called him back and was just talking to him. And it really is about like what life on call is, and, being prepared for that and supporting her through that. And I was like, that is the coolest thing, that he was like, I want to know how to support her.
Yes.
And things like that. And he was like, I want her to get any training she wants and any of this stuff. And
Oh,
I was like, that's awesome. It's like,
Yeah.
it is.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
know a lot of people have asked, they're like, we need like a support group for the spouses and
Yeah.
partners of doulas.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
So I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a Facebook page out there or a group or something, or
Something.
maybe
Yeah.
we just need to have some of our husbands like start one. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. I
So,
love that you mentioned that you can like come home and talk to your husband about the births too. Because I'm the same way with my husband. Like he probably knows way more about birth than most men because
Mhm.
like I come home and I'm like, this happened and that happened and this is new
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's another part of your support team, which I love. I love that.
Absolutely. And I feel
Yep.
like it wouldn't be fair to not, I mean, he comes home and tells me about his day,
Yeah.
Right.
and I saw this person and this happened and, or so and so struggling with this. Is there any way we could help them? And, whatever is going on in his life, he shares with me. So it would feel really one-sided if I didn't share what
Yeah.
I was experiencing. And so knowing
Mhm.
that he's going to listen and be supportive in any way he can is really helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's awesome. Something else that I just thought of is, because you're a childbirth educator and a doula, do you find that those work well together? And,
Mm.
have you had to cancel a class because of a birth, and, just kind of how you make that work?
Right. I do feel like they work well together because, anytime I'm talking to a potential client, always mention that they can take classes with me. And sometimes I will end up with people that interviewed me for a doula and end up deciding to take a class and basically educate themselves and not hiring me as a doula, but I was able to educate them. And they
Mm-hmm.
decide, well, my mom is going to be there, or we don't want to doula, whatever their reasoning is fine.
Right.
But I still ended up having them in class with me. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes then even after the birth, they'll, sometimes call, want to talk to me, and kind of follow up with what's going on in their life, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes or sometimes it's a doula client that wants to be educated as well. Sometimes I've had other doulas send their doula clients to me, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Or, learning, making friends with all of the local home birth midwives. And they know that I teach, the specific
Mm-hmm.
um, home birth and birth center class has been very helpful for them to send clients just for that class. So I think it works like very well together. I think it's possible to just do one or the other, absolutely. But I like the combination, especially because it can be a little bit more consistent with the classes on um, scheduling is
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
nice,
Yep.
when you are doing
Mhm.
on-call stuff and then maybe you're not on call for a couple months. And so you can schedule those classes and kind of have a calmer time in life. And I have
Mhm.
kind of found what day seems to work the best in my area for people to take classes on. And so that, and yeah, have I had to cancel for a birth? Yes, I canceled a class last year for a mom that it really, really looked like she was in labor. Hospital sent her home. She had the baby the next morning. She was kind of going
Mm-hmm.
through this lovely,
Yep.
kind of a short prodromal labor.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have to cancel a class. And I asked the class, do you want to do the makeup online or do you want to just extend our class out by a week? Because I could.
Yeah.
And they all opted to extend out the class by a week,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
worked just fine. So it's always up
Yeah,
to
that's
them on
great.
which one they want to do.
Yep. Yeah, I've done it. I surprisingly, I'm like, over all these years, I only had to cancel class twice.
Yeah.
And a lot of people
Okay.
worry about that. I'm like, I've only had to do it twice. And yeah, they've
Hmm.
all just said, we'll just extend it a week. No big deal.
Yeah.
They would much
Yeah.
rather do that.
They
So,
would much rather
Yeah.
usually, like, once they have it, sometimes it's really hard to convince people to meet in a group setting. And
mhm,
I think because so much of our life is lived online, people can be a little hesitant, strangely, about coming to an
mhm,
in-person group class.
Yeah.
And then once you get them there, I love to see the dynamic change. In the
Mhm.
first week, everyone's a little bit quieter. They're not sure who each other are. And then by, the after the 6 weeks or so,
Mhm.
They're suddenly, it's like, okay, guys, calm down. We have to get through the curriculum.
Right.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
They're all good friends by that
They're
point.
all good
And
friends.
Yeah.
They don't
Mhm.
want to leave on that last day. They're trying to hang out a little bit longer. Could we meet again?
Yep.
So to see the change of like, oh, and I think that the home birth classes even more so because they have met people that are like-minded.
Mhm.
And they just like, oh my goodness, there's someone else that's similar to
Right.
who I am. And they just make this bond that is just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
What's your
is.
favorite class to teach? Or what do you teach the most?
Have ended up teaching the hospital class the most. I think that's just in this area the biggest need
Mhm.
currently. There with like the home birth midwives, most of them teach their own classes that they have
Mm.
made up themselves. So there isn't as big of a demand for that class.
Mhm.
And so the hospital and the homecoming.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
awesome.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I always love hearing about like different areas and yeah,
Yeah.
what classes are popular.
hmm
Mhm.
Well, do you have any other advice you would like to give to maybe new doulas or instructors about, maybe starting this or just like how to make it work? I don't
Yeah.
know,
What
just
would you tell
any
yourself
advice?
when you were starting?
Um, hmm. Definitely make the professional connections on getting your name out there and making friends, whether it's with other birth workers or other people that you're going to end up meeting through, the chiropractors and the acupuncturists and the pelvic floor therapists. Can
Yeah.
be really important and helpful. The lactation consultants that they all know your face and your name because you're going to be referring people to them and they can refer people to you. And
Mm-hmm.
then when it comes to on-call life, I think the biggest thing, first, you set up your support system. You know who's going to be there to help you. You know you have a backup to your backup in case
Mhm.
somebody falls through or so. People get sick.
Mm-hmm.
People go on vacation.
Yep, things
You know,
happen.
things happen.
Mhm.
Just like things happen in our lives, things happen in everyone else's lives too that connect with us.
Yeah.
And then go ahead and live your life. Yet, kind of like, okay, so I know I'm on call, and as it gets closer and closer to the due date, or, mom is having more symptoms, okay, I'm gonna make sure, my doula bag's in the car, I have snacks in the car, like a change of clothes in the car. But at the same time, I have to live my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
had a friend one
Mhm.
time, I was, mom was due any minute, and I was taking apart one of my kids' rooms and repainting it. And she was like, how can you be doing that when you're on call? And I'm like, because I want to live my life. I'm
Yep.
not going to
Yeah.
put everything on hold for 5 weeks or 4 weeks while I'm on call because someone could call me and they're in labor. I have to still do the things I want to do with my family.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I would tell people. You make your backup plan, you have things ready to go so that you're
Mm-hmm.
not scrambling. And then you can be like at peace with, I'm ready to go. And now I'm
Yeah.
going to do what I want to within
Yep.
Yeah.
reason.
Yep.
Yep.
That's super smart.
Absolutely. That's what I like preach in our doula training is like you cannot just like say, well, I can't do this because I'm on call. Like
Right.
you
Right.
have to live your life.
Well, and that is going to be a way that your family is going to get tired of you being on call.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well,
Yep.
mom
Yeah.
can never go to the movies with us. I did have to get up and leave in the middle of a movie. I was pretty sure I would have to, and I did, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but my husband was there.
Right. When you're
I don't
prepared
even
for
have to
Yeah.
that.
do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yep.
fine.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yep. Definitely.
That was
Well,
good
this
advice.
has been awesome. I love hearing from other doulas and just kind of how they make it work and how they love what they're doing.
Yeah.
So this was awesome. Can you share
Yeah.
where people can find you if they want to come like find you on social media or something?
Sure. So on Facebook and Instagram, my business is Birth with Grace, and my website is birthwithgrace.net, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
was good.
you.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Feel free to subscribe and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.